Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by CrowCast, of course. Thanks for joining us again. Grand final week in the AFL, and we've had the Brownlow run and won again last night. Joining me to talk all about everything that's going on at the moment is my motley crew, Peter J. How you going, Peter?
I'm really well, Fane. Yourself?
Very good, thank you. Donkey, how are you?
Yeah, kicking goals tonight, Fane.
Oh, that's very good to hear. And, of course, Macca, how are you going, mate?
No, doing very well, thanks, mate.
Good to hear. Thanks to everyone on Spreaker for joining us. Of course, you can listen to us on Spreaker and or YouTube and or Facebook Live. So tune in wherever you like on any of those platforms. Of course, we have to thank our sponsors, and I'm sure, gentlemen, you'll join me in thanking Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate for all your real estate needs, buying, selling or renting. The boys at Down to Earth Electrical, of course, for all your electrical and data needs. And last but not least, of course, our wonderful patrons on Patreon. If you want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/AFL CrowCast or go to our website at aflcrowcast.com and click on the Patreon button. Whew, got all that out of the way. Let's have some news, shall we? Pedro.
Fane, well, I suppose the first bit of news tonight is that PJ Crows is back in the chat. He's returned from a long stint away, so good to have him back. And good to see everybody there chatting away tonight, so welcome to everybody. Well, the biggest news, of course, was the Brownlow medal last night. I thought Nat Fyfe was a worthy winner and a terrific speech, and that was all very, very good. So well done to him. Everybody happy with that result?
Look, I thought he is a brilliant footballer, and just the way he spoke and how calm he was in it's obviously a pressure cooked situation when you win something like that, and he was really in command of the situation and told his story, and I thought it was possibly the best interview, successful speech that I've heard from a Brownlow medalist. I thought it was brilliant.
Okay, so moving along from the Brownlow medal,
we must have thought that was a bag of shit or something.
I just backed Crips didn't win.
We'll go back to the game, shall we? On the weekend, a couple of terrific prelim finals, I thought, and in particular, the GWS Collingwood game was an absolute nail biter, and I really, really enjoyed that game of football. Belter. It was absolute belter, wasn't it? And it was full of admiration for the way that GWS played, and you couldn't not enjoy their victory. But I guess the real controversy that came out of it was again score review. That was what got a lot of the news, and interesting to hear all of your thoughts on the score review system and how that worked on Saturday afternoon.
Well, I think the first requirement they're going to have to put down for anybody being on that review committee is you can't walk in with a white walking stick and sunglasses on for a start. Seriously, I mean, blind Freddie could actually see that was touched, and yet they put out this double Dutch statement stating that they went through the palaver of what it was and then said that they decided it was touched. But the reviewer at the time wasn't convinced, and therefore what he did was in accordance with AFL policy. So AFL policy is obviously, you can get it fucking wrong. It doesn't really matter.
Well, it's very rare for me to jump in and support the AFL on anything, but they're a little bit of between a rock and a hard place, I think, the AFL on this one, because I think that really what they were saying is that the evidence in the cold, hard light of day was pretty clear that the ball was touched, but and that they conceded that it was touched. But what they're saying, and they clarified that a little bit a couple of days later, was that in the heat of the moment, at the end of the day, you can have all of the camera technology you like there, but at the end of the day, you've got a human there that's actually interpreting it and interpreting the data. And I think what they're saying is that in the absolute heat of the moment, that particular human got it wrong. Under the pressure that he was under to make that decision. Now, looking back on it, you sort of think, well, how could you possibly get that wrong? But he did, And so for all of the, the technical, cameras and everything that they've got to make those decisions, at the end of the day, it is subject to human error.
Mm.
Or
manipulation.
But would you would you give us balanced commentary as that though, Pete, if we'd lost the final by less than a goal in a situation like that?
Well, probably not. But what I would say, Macca, and I've said this all along, is that I honestly don't believe that the review system should be used for what are effectively central umpire decisions. Now, whether if a ball's touched off the boot, that's an umpiring, that's a field umpiring decision. So if during play around the middle of the ground there's a ball that's touched and an umpire calls mark or not mark, you don't go to the review system for that. It's an umpiring decision. And I've always believed that the goal review system should be for goal line decisions, whether the ball's touched over the line or not, or whether the ball's hit the post or not. It shouldn't be for whether it's flicked a finger, 30 metres out from goal. And I've always thought that.
It's the thin edge of the wedge, though, isn't it? Once you introduce technology, and we've seen this with the cricket, it started off being DRS for LBs, and now it's, everything. They're using it to judge catches, they're using it to judge boundaries, all sorts of things. And the argument, I guess, is that we've got the technology there, we should use it. And I guess it's the same in AFL. If you've got the technology there, you should use it. And look, I think you're being a little bit charitable, Peter, to be honest with you, because the only person who didn't think that was touched was the bloke making the call. And I freely admit that'd be a pressure cooker situation. Something happens and all of a sudden it's thrown to you and you've got to make a split decision. But in every walk of life, in whatever profession you're in, you either cut the mustard or you don't. And you would think that if they've implemented art correctly, that they would have gone through a massive vetting program. They would have done lots of run-throughs and different scenarios and all that sort of stuff. I think you're letting them off the hook. It was another fail, and it could have cost GWS a grand final berth.
Yeah.
I'm not letting him off the hook at all. He's made as I said, he would have been the only person who would have thought that wasn't touched, and that particular person cannot possibly be engaged to do that job again. He's got to go. He's obviously not up to it. But I guess all I am saying is that the AFL, from their perspective, they can vet someone, they can put the technology in place, but at the end of the day, if you've got a human in there who melts under that kind of pressure, which he obviously did, then that's on him, and he shouldn't be in that position. Absolutely not.
I'm going to go full conspiracy here and just say, full Collingwood match review panel, and suddenly Toby Green's out for a week. Collingwood down by a few goals, get a little bit of a run on. Suddenly the goal that's touched, they count as a goal. It's game on for the AFL. It's off, then it's all over. They haven't had there hasn't been a lot of crackers in the final series. I'm full conspiracy. This is just they decided it was a goal because it was more beneficial to them. It's just a rigged competition. And Carlton and the fact that Collingwood wouldn't get up just shows how inept they are. That they can't even do it with massive AFL manipulation.
Well, I tell you what, though, gentlemen, it all amounts to naught. It all amounts to naught for GWS, given the announcement today that the three field umpires of those three, two, Ryan and Stevic, did the 2017 grand final on behalf of the Richmond Tigers. Those two, along with Razor Ray, will be umpiring on Saturday. So the gutsy performance from GWS will all amount to naught at about 2:30 on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah.
A couple of comments about their performance. Fiend and I have been very much on the back of the GWS coach for not putting some steel and stiffness into that particular side. They've relied on talent, but not necessarily a little bit of steel. And I'd have to say, and I think Fiend would have to agree with me, that they've shown a lot of steel in just the game before the final started, and then right through the finals, they're playing as tough footy as anybody is playing. Do you agree with that, Fiend?
Oh, yeah, look, and I was listening to SEN this afternoon, and they trotted out a couple of stats, and I can't remember the numbers, but essentially their contested ball is way up in the finals. Oh, the amount of stoppages in GWS games has gone from like 80 to over 105 or something like that. So they have changed the way that they're playing in terms of making it far more of a contest. And, you know, they used to be the outside running Rolls-Royce machine that didn't have a heart. But they guts that game out, and they're playing the style of football that wins you a premiership, in my view, albeit against a Richmond team that they just find ways, don't they, Richmond? It's stunning. And, you know, I didn't think that Lynch would have as much of an impact on that team as what he has, but it just gives them another out. It just gives them the ability again to take a high ball, and it's not Jack Rewalt, you know, doing all the work, and Lynch has been a real key for them over the last month or so. But I agree with you, Mac. I think GWS, all credit to them, they're playing good, hard footy. They could have a couple back. Talk of Caniglio coming back. Of course, they got Whitfield coming back off his appendicitis. And the other bloke that I can't remember, Green, that's right. Really good additions, Whitfield in particular, and I hope he's right. I hope Whitfield is right, because he does the season that he's had for them. He deserves to be able to have an influence on this game. But does anyone honestly think that GWS have got a show in this game?
Yeah, I do. I genuinely do. I actually backed them at $3.40 in the last game, because I actually thought they would actually win it. When I sat down, and originally I went the other way around, but when I thought about it afterwards, I thought the way they're going about their footy with that much tougher attitude, and as you say, forcing contests, I thought they could win it. And if they can actually apply the same level of pressure throughout the game against Richmond, then I believe they can win it. The danger against Richmond, which is a little bit more than, say, Collingwood, for example, is Richmond has got that ability to play that burst football and catch you out very quickly. So you can't afford to make too many errors against Richmond because of the style of football that they play. But I think that if GWS bring that game and they can apply it all the way through the game, I think they can win it.
And I honestly, Finn, I think that Richmond will win this, and as you say, they just seem to find ways. And, you know, they've had this really sort of nice long run at the MCG, which we thought that they would. I think they've had, you know, 9 out of the last 10 or 10 out of the last 11. There's only that game up in Brisbane that they go away from the MCG. In the travel to Brisbane. So they've had a lovely little run at the MCG. They're really sort of in form at that ground. They're pretty fit, apart from Jack Graham has pulled out today with a shoulder injury. And you know, and I'm not being facetious here. You know that they will comfortably win the free kick count.
Yeah, they'll get the rub of the green.
There will be critical moments, and I'm being deadly serious here. There will be critical moments in that grand final, and the umpires, they will influence the game, and it will be in Richmond's favour. So
it's like parallels, obviously, between us playing Richmond in 2017, in that GWS are a non-Victorian team coming into the Tiger Cauldron at the MCG. GWS have already done something we haven't managed to do for a couple of years, and that's win a final in Victoria. The last time we did that was against the Bulldogs, wasn't it? And I can't remember the last time we won a final at the MCG. It was probably the last time we won a flag.
Wasn't the Bulldogs one at the G?
No, I thought it was at the... Oh,
it was at the G.
Was it the G?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So they're already one up on us, you know, of recent times. But I think it's going to be interesting to see the different levels of passion, because when we played Richmond in that final, Richmond hadn't won anything for 1,000 years. But this is their second grand final in 3 years, obviously. And I just wonder whether there might be a little bit more support for GWS being the underdog than there otherwise would have been had this been Richmond's first crack at it.
I was going to jump in with this, Fiend, as well. I've got a couple of pie mates who were saying, the mood in Melbourne is a little bit different than it was a couple of years ago. Richmond were sort of like, your chubby little cousin who wanted to see do well, even if you didn't go for them. But since winning the flag, every one of their supporters turns out to be an arrogant flog, just like the rest of them. So I've been told there's not the hanger-oners that they've had before. Which I think is a big thing. And it's also, I think GWS don't go in with the same pressure that we did as well. We were the front runners and we panicked. We did we were basically coached by Bill Shorten on grand final day and choked a massive lead and didn't know what to do. So I think coming from behind and I think not being Richmond's first flag in 30 odd years, I think is actually going to be two things that are going to be in GWS's favour, and winning a game last week.
And I think a lot of the general public from Victoria will barrack for GWS because just because they're a Victorian team, Richmond, doesn't mean to say they're going to get support from the other Victorian members of whose teams aren't playing, because they hate each other just as much as we hate Port Adelaide. And I think that Donkey summed it up pretty well. They have become a very arrogant mob of flogs since they've become a good side in the last couple of years. And I don't think they'll get a lot. They don't get Collingwood supporters aren't going to barrack them. Carlton ones are. They're not going to barrack them. So I think the neutrals will give GWS reasonable support anyhow. And I would just love to see them win it, because I just think that they are a very talented football team and they are actually playing good hard footy. And let's just hope they don't get crucified as much as you think they will, Pete, but you're probably right. But I can see them winning, but they have to do everything right.
They'll need to, in terms of the run of play, to cover that, all of those odds, they'll need to actually, if this makes sense, they'll need to be a 3 or 4 better goal side than Richmond to win by under a goal.
I agree with that.
Yep.
It'd be interesting too where they get Caniglio, Whitfield, and back as well. Whitfield obviously up against the clock with his appendix, and Caniglio, they're saying, has been running but not necessarily the load. And I think if those guys are playing and play properly, then that really does help GWS, because I think they've got more talent across the side. It's just about where they can bring it all together.
Other big news floating around: Willie Rioli has now returned a positive test to marijuana in his system. So I think there were 2 tests, and there was the one that he bodged with the sports drink,
Gatorade.
The Gatorade, and now apparently there was a second test, and he's come back with a positive reading for cannabis.
Yes,
was in his system. It's an in-game test, and obviously a banned in-game substance. So very bad news for Willie Rioli there. That was.
I don't understand the total technicalities of how the penalties are imposed, but if I understand it correctly, doesn't he get 4 years automatically for dodging the first test or failing to take the first test? And there he's got another he's got another offence in the fact that he's come back with a positive. Does that mean he gets another 4 years? What is it? All form part?
I don't know, Macca. I don't know.
No, that'd be concurrent, Mac.
The other thing I don't understand. Yeah. Well, the other thing I don't understand, and he must have had different stuff to me, but apparently marijuana is considered performance enhancing. I would never get off the couch and stop eating Cheetos.
No, it's not performance enhancing. It's recreation.
Oh, okay.
What Cousins was on when he played against us that day? That was performance enhancing.
My God, what was
whatever
that?
the hell that was?
The Ben Cousins meal from Hungry Jack's. No burger and chips, just Coke and ice.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So turning to the Crows, Peter, you want to turn to the Crows?
Yeah. Well, there's we are the news team of the off season.
Well, let's have it quickly.
Sorry, go on. No, you say. Sorry.
I was just going to say, should we quickly just congratulate Eddie Betts on Goal of the Year?
Yeah.
Which might be his last hurrah for the Crows, if the reports are to be believed.
It kind of sounded like it when he gave the speech, didn't it? I'd like to thank the Crows for...
He looked totally lost, didn't he? He didn't know. Yeah. Eddie has been up there before, and I know he's a shy individual, but he it was like he didn't know who to thank because there's no coach there or whatever. So, and he's talking about leaving. He really looked like he was a bit of a spot there when he was trying to make that speak.
It was quite funny at the Brownlow because, like, you had 17 tables of the different teams, and then you had ours, which is potentially United Nations, because they're all fucking off somewhere else. Like, about 80% of the people on that table had been talked about in trade, so it'd be interesting to look back at that table in 12 months' time and see if there are actually still any Crows left out of that mob. But I reckon. Well, the jungle drums are that Eddie's going to Carlton. Gold Coast seems to be off the table, doesn't it?
Yeah, that seems to be the one. But look, I was just going to say that it's funny. We poke fun at the media all through the year, but that we never get any coverage. Well, I tell you what, we are the number one team in town, aren't we? So I think that, in terms of some factual stuff, we at least had some factual stuff today where Brodie Smith came out and put to bed any thought that he would be leaving the club. He's come out and made a statement.
Yes.
Saying that he's got a 2-year contract and he ain't going anywhere. So yes. Brodie Smith is off the table.
Well played, Charlie Cameron, for generating about 3 weeks' worth of media coverage out of that one.
Yeah, that's right. So Lairdy, interestingly, hasn't seen the need to do that. So he's one that is still talked about as potentially going. And then, of course, we had a big bomb this morning from Tim Watson on SEN to saying that Brad Crouch is very close to a, I think they said it was something like a 6-year, $5 million deal or something stupid like that with Gold Coast. So, I suspect probably more his manager trying to get the deal done here, but, who knows?
I was reading on before I came on here tonight on the AFL site that Brad Crouch's manager's hawking him around, and he's asking for a 5-year contract at $1 million a year. And now it's sort of an Emmett claim type thing, but he's actually his manager. He's saying yes, he's got a preference to stay at the Crows, but let's see what you're going to offer for 5 years. And now, if that's the truth, then there'd be very little chance he'll end up at the Crows next year.
Well, there's a couple of things at play on this one, Max. Sorry, Pete. There's a couple of things at play. Obviously, there's the shopping around factor. But Brad Crouch has also joined this new management company that's popped up over the last little while. And I would expect that all the players that have joined, just escapes me the name of it right now, but I would expect that you'd see quite a few players that are in that agency being quite active in the media, because I reckon that's a pretty good way to drum up business if you're seen to be proactive in the player market. So, a grain of salt for me on this one so far.
So what do you think it all means then, Pete?
I think it means we're wounded in the water and everyone's coming at us.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Brad Crouch in particular.
Look, he's probably is shopping him around. Why wouldn't he shop him around? That's his job, and I think he's being seen. He's trying to be seen to be doing his job proactively.
But is that appropriate when he's under contract?
Mate, look,
I don't think.
Mac, you've got to boil it back. Brad Crouch right now is trying to lock in a 5-year contract extension on big money, and he's been public. He said that he wants to stay at the Crows for 5 years on big money, and he has just polled the top of the Brownlow out of all Crows, and his manager is drumming up business like he's leveraging for price. That's his prerogative, and I'm glad he wants to stay at the Crows and driving up price. That's the tools you got in the bank. I don't think he's going anywhere.
The only thing I thought was interesting is the fact that it was the Gold Coast that emerged as the big money offer, and when it's the Gold Coast who has a whole lot of stuff that we would like to get our hands on. So,
but has there been the offer? Has there, like, I can't actually find anywhere that's actually said that Gold Coast have made him an offer. I think there's been a bunch of speculation about Gold Coast, but I haven't actually seen anything that's suggesting that they've...
Nothing from Gold Coast, only from Tim Watson was the one that went with it this morning, saying that there's been that he in his words, he said he's close to signing a deal. Yeah. So, I mean, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, I think that the most likely scenario is what you're both putting, and that is the fact that, he's being shopped around and they're trying to get a deal done with us. But I just thought that it was interesting that, Gold Coast are a team that I'm sure that we would like to do some business with.
Well, just on that particular theme, Pete, just continuing on with that, Vardy made it post a little bit earlier that Greenwood had committed to the Suns for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
As a statement rather than not a rumour or anything like that.
Well, it's a rumour on Twitter.
I broke that like 6 weeks ago. Good on you, Vardy.
There's no fact about that either. It's being touted on Twitter. It's about the same as Sean Higgins is just about ready to sign for Geelong.
Yeah. Oh, look, as I said at the outset, the only substantial fact that we have at the moment is Brodie Smith coming out and saying that he's not going anywhere.
Well, and Source.
Everything
Source.
Source is going. But everything else is pretty much speculation. Nothing's been nailed down as yet. But, there's a string of them, and we've still got Jenkins, we've still got Keith. All these guys, there's lots of rumours floating around about these guys. So, yeah.
My concern with Jenkins is I don't see anybody trying to knock the door down for him.
It's been quiet, hasn't it, on Jenkins, and it's been quiet on Keith, which surprises me. St Kilda have just signed on their new coach, and it looks like they've got Paddy Ryder over the line at the Saints as well. So, I mean, it could be a decent off-season. Aren't they sending Jack Stevens somewhere? Is Jack Stevens going somewhere?
Geelong, apparently.
He's wanting to go to Geelong, I think.
So, yeah, you're right, Mac.
Is he old enough to go there?
Well, he's a midfielder, and that's all they take. So, they're just going to have 18 midfielders on the ground.
Midfielders over 30.
In terms of players the big rumour floating around is that we have a bit of a crush on Billy Frampton from Port Adelaide. So,
how do you feel about that, Pete?
Oh, not great. I'm about not very exciting, but anyway, it is what it is. That's Adelaide for you.
Well, Porter got a few dropping off.
Always going after the big targets.
Porter got a few dropping off. There's a couple that are considering their future, so to say, and one of those is the ex. I forget who he plays with now. Leanett, who I wouldn't mind having a look at, actually.
Now, there's a player I wouldn't mind us having a look at.
Nice player, good player.
Yeah, no, I do. I've got a bit of time for him. I think that he would be someone that I think we should definitely look at if we could get reasonably cheaply.
Yeah, well, he's. I forget the names that they rattled off this afternoon when I was half listening, but his name did pop out, and I thought, geez, I wouldn't mind having a little dip at him. Jared, he used to play for Sturt, didn't he, Jared Leanett? Or am I thinking about someone else?
No, I'm not sure.
Anyway. But yeah, there's the Brodie Grundy thing seems to be dead. The reports are that he's going to stay with Collingwood for another year. Have you?
From our point of view, I think that just presuming that he does eventually want to come home and that we eventually want him, I think that it'd be very good if he doesn't come at the end of this year, that it is at the end of next year, because then obviously we don't have to give away draft picks, etc. And it also gives us time to put $1 million into the bank for him.
100% back. The other thing too, I was thinking, and I flip between, going Brodie's an absolute star and we should get him in at all costs, but also then going, ROB's quite a serviceable ruck. What's the drop off from having ROB in an elite mid, or flipping around and going for the elite ruck and not getting the elite mid win with the pick. So. Because I think you'd take pick 3 to get Brodie Grundy. I just don't know that his benefit is worth the price.
Well, that's a long debate. Long debate.
Long debate.
And I can see merit on both sides of that. I'd lean to taking a gun player when he wants to come to you.
I don't disagree with that either. I'm just like, but I just don't think it's I don't think it's quite open and shut.
No, I'd agree with that, Donkey. I think, I guess my argument has been that it's a fairly even and not a overly, like it's an even draft coming up, with only a couple of real elites, if you believe the intel, and then pretty even right through to pick 25. So, how valuable is pick 4 in that kind of a draft? Is it more worth spending on someone who is a proven elite player rather than speculating on pick 4 in this particular draft? So that's probably where I've leant towards, take the known quantity. But I can see merit the other way too, that you just load up on draft picks and do the full rebuild and hope for the best. And you're right. The fact that we've got Rob means that we're not going to be wanting in the ruck. He's probably a top half a dozen ruckmen in the comp, and so nothing to sneeze at whatsoever. So yeah.
The other poor player, I think it was Dougal Howard, wasn't it, who is being shopped around by Port Adelaide.
More likely return to Melbourne, I think.
Yeah, originally they were saying that Adelaide might be sniffing around him, but not in the recent conversations, as you say, Pete, that more likely to go back to Victoria.
Just Billy for us. Just Billy.
Yeah.
Three games in 5 years, Billy.
Yeah. Leonard's 25, so we probably wouldn't chase him.
Well, if we play our cards right, we'll be able to pick up Butcher as a DFA.
Why not?
Jesus.
He can take the goal kicking practice, yeah.
We're trying to maintain some semblance of credibility here, Donkey. Jesus. So it's that weird holding pattern week, isn't it? Where, we're all geared up to the grand... Well, the competition is geared up for the grand final. Trade radio hasn't started up in full swing yet, so we've just got little snippets out of their bloody Twitter account, and the media's just sort of circling around, throwing out bits and pieces as and when they feel necessary. But with trade week starting on the 7th, isn't it, of October?
Yep.
Is that the actual beginning of the trade period, or is that the delisted free agent rubbish? Or
No.
I can't remember.
Well, I can't say exactly what the dates are.
It's the 7th. I'm pretty sure that's when trade starts. So it's all speculation. But I guess the other thing that has gone very quiet is the actual review, isn't it? It's gone. Yeah. We touched on it earlier, but it's been very quiet the last few days.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they're just getting on and getting on with the job. But I think I heard that they were supposed to release it or complete it last Friday, but I think it's next Friday now they're talking about.
Yes, it's been extended a week. Yeah.
Does that mean they're going to dump a whole heap of key findings at 5 o'clock on the Friday before the grand final?
Oh no, that'll be very carefully vetted. Very carefully vetted before it's given to the pitchfork holders. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Start with AFL. And
I'll have to word that very carefully.
Yeah. Well, I would think that the result of the review would depend on when it's announced. That if they're going to keep Burton and Camporelli on and piss everybody off, they'll probably release it on the Friday night, just before the grand final, because nobody will notice it. And if they are getting rid of them and cleaning the place out a bit, then I would think that would be after the grand final.
Mm.
No, I think they'll make a fanfare one way or the other. I think they'll back themselves in one way or the other, and they'll want some clear air for it. So I think it'll happen in the slow week between the GF and the start of trade week. And irrespective, they will be espousing the great benefits and the learnings and the reflections that they've been able to make out of the review. And they will go full tilt at it, Macca. It doesn't matter which way they flop, they'll make it a big deal.
Well, Fagan did say that on 5AA that the results of the review and the appointment of the coach must take place about the middle of the week before trade week.
Yep.
So that's in line with what you're saying.
Yep. And that's not much of a turnaround, is it? If you're looking at an assistant from GWS or Richmond, and of course one of the coaching candidates is Matthew Nix, who's senior assistant at GWS, and so if they're already lining up a post grand final announcement, that might just put Matthew Nix in the frame, I reckon.
Could do.
Because it seems unlikely. That they would continue to they must have already interviewed him, Matthew Nix, because otherwise they're not going to be able to interview him and make a decision in 2 days or 3 days.
Yeah, there were rumours that he was on the list to be interviewed. Yeah.
Oh, I'd be bloody mad if he wasn't on the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think he'll be high up there.
And the Bays coach has been quoted as saying that he'd like to be in the AFL system, but he won't come for any sort of lucky job. He wants to be either a coach or a senior assistant. So I wonder whether he's in the frame at all.
Well, interesting, and I think that, as I said off air, I reckon probably 7 or 8. I reckon you could throw a blanket over, and you'd say it'd have legitimate sort of claims if you wanted to support their position.
So if we were going to bring in Matthew Nix, for example, speculating for a moment, if we were going to bring in Matthew Nix, a first-time AFL coach, would you want an inexperienced senior assistant, inexperienced in the system, like Mark Stone, or would you want to put someone with more credentials over the top, like I'd say Brendan Bolton?
Well, just throwing a real wild card out there, I think you'll probably say no. What about Ross Lyon?
Well, yeah, of that ilk. I'm not talking about individuals as such, Mac. I'm saying, do you want someone fresh, or do you want someone like a similar model that we had with Dean Bailey and Brent Sanderson?
I want that model.
Because
I think you really want somebody with a bit of backbone and a bit of experience and a lot of nous. Otherwise, they're no good to you there, really.
Well, yeah, but I mean I guess that's what I'm saying, because we've had a couple of blokes throw their hats in the ring. You can make a case for Jared Schofield being a good senior assistant, Mark Stone, a couple of others. But do you really want that type above a rookie coach, or do you want someone like a Ross Lyon or a Brad Scott or a Brendan Bolton or someone like that?
Well, I think I read somewhere that Brendan Bolton is about to be appointed director of coaching at Hawthorn. So he's back there in the Hawthorn nest where he's comfortable, and good on him. So I don't think it'll be him, but I think that you've said the only 2 names that fit that bill that are out there and available, and that would be Lyon or Scott. Whether those 2 are are they the kind of characters that can sort of work in the background and not be the number one? That's hard to say. Whether that model works with those kind of egos in the background.
I don't think Ross Lyon would.
No, I floated the name just for a bit of fun, really, because I don't think he could. And I think Scott is supposed to be lined up for some position in the AFL. So, and I wouldn't want him anyhow. I think he's been an absolute failure.
Yeah, but he's been a failure as a head coach, but so was Brendan Bolton a failure as a head coach.
Good point.
Not everyone, Al Clarkson is a big rap for Bolton, and there's no way Hawthorn would have him back in such a senior position if they didn't think much of him. And maybe it was either bad timing or a bad fit, or he's just not head coach material. But that doesn't mean that he doesn't have something to offer. And I'm a bit each way on Brad Scott. I didn't like him as a coach at all, but I just wonder whether he adds a bit of steel to a pretty inexperienced coaching box. In that sort of scenario. I don't know how I feel about Brad Scott. I wouldn't like Rossi Lyon, though.
All the chat has been that to be a successful coach these days, have to be all touchy-feely with the players. This is the coach. Not necessarily the assistants, but the coach has to be. And I would think that the senior assistant would have to be very much along that line as well. And that's why, somebody like a Lion or even Scott, I've got my doubts about them. Because the players, obviously, one thing at the Crows, the players don't feel valued. There's no doubt about that. They did not feel valued. And that's why there's all been this talk about people leaving and disharmony and et cetera, and whether they didn't feel valued by the coaching staff, whether they didn't feel valued by Burton, etc. But overall, they did not feel valued. And so it's going to need a coach that's got successful coaching ability and plans and ideas, etc. But he's also got to be touchy-feely and be able to handle the players and make them feel that they are important.
But Macca, though, do you set it up more as a yin and yang though? So does Nick's come in as a maybe a hard nosed the head coach, and then do you get someone like a Stone who has been in the AFL system for a long time before he went to Glenelg? Let's not forget that. Got a lot of experience in the AFL system. Did a lot of years with Fremantle, Sydney, and West Coast. So he's quite experienced, and from all accounts, a bit of a Fagan type. A bit of a get the boys together and do you set up that kind of old he's 50, so is he your old father figure type that the players can go to, and does that balance off a more hard nosed coach?
Well, I think one of those two has to be exactly what we're talking about of that nature. It was when Charlie Cameron left, and when he was talking about the reason why he left, he said he felt like he wasn't valued. He said he felt like he was a traffic cone. And, the players have to feel valued. They have to feel important. Even if they're not in the side, they have to feel that, they've been looked at and there's a chance coming up and we like what you're doing and this is the plan to try and get you into the side, etc., etc. So one of them has to be. And generally you think it would be the coach, and the offsider would be the one that sits there working out the hard-nosed plans. But whether it works the other way around, I don't know.
So what about David Noble?
Would be perfect.
As head coach?
Yep.
I'd have him in any capacity in the club. Whether he's made the football man.
See, I'm in your camp on Nobes, Macca. He's quite polarising amongst the big footy faithful. Some people don't have any time for him whatsoever, and others do. I have quite a bit of time for him, and the one thing that I know about Noble is that he knows the club and he knows what the landscape is. And from what I've heard from more than one person who was associated down at Glenelg when he was coaching down at Glenelg, people say he's the best coach they ever played under.
Yeah, I can believe that because when he was at Adelaide, I used to go out and watch a lot of training sessions, and David, he'd talk to me and he'd chat with me and he'd tell me a lot of things, but he wouldn't tell me the things that he shouldn't tell me. But I thought his people skills were very, very good.
Yeah, I always thought that he was pretty harshly judged by people that wanted him out. I thought that he held us together and actually strung a decent list together after we had all those sanctions and what were the Tibbet stuff. And
yep, agree.
I don't understand why people were on him. I thought without him we'd be in 10 times a world of pain. And I think just looking at what happened at Brisbane the moment he got up there and what happened to us just shows what a hole in not having him around the club was. So, yeah.
I think the only thing that I'd say against it is the fact that nothing against him personally, but I think that he isn't it reasonably common knowledge that he wants to pursue the administrative side of football, and I think that the pathway to CEO at Brisbane has been set up for him. That's my understanding anyway.
Phil Walsh never wanted to be a head coach.
He was always in the coaching game.
I don't think Chris Fagan never wanted to be a head coach either, did he? He was.
No, but they were always in coaching. They were always
Chris Fagan
was,
wasn't.
I think, wasn't he?
I don't think Chris Fagan was. I think he
I
was.
thought he was football manager or something.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. But yeah, I think that he has got a thing about being a CEO, and he's been to Harvard and he's gone that way. He may well be a very, very good candidate for coaching, but I just get the impression that's not.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Really,
Pete.
No, yeah, probably right.
It's not the direction he wants to go.
Yeah.
We're just saying it'd be nice if
Yeah. Look, I'd have no issue with it at all.
Yeah, the one thing I will say about the Adelaide Crows is the fact is that, and it's somewhat forced upon them by necessity, and from last year onwards, 2018 onward, it's been very, very hard to get any leaks out of the club, hasn't it? Going back 5-6 years ago, I had a board member that used to tell me about everything that was going on, and now it's very, very hard to find any leaks out of the club.
Just Macca throwing down the big sources there. Well, Pete, our lines have dried up a little bit since Mitch McGovern's gone to Carlton.
Yeah, they were the halcyon days, mate.
Yeah. Every day was a new tidbit. It was fantastic.
Just an adventure. Didn't we get some stuff through that? My goodness me.
But it used to be like singing canaries. You could find out everything.
Yeah, it is a bit tight.
And to be fair, that wandered on that stuff because, that was the first time we were alerted to the fact that I think the camp was as bad as what it was, and the club just kept saying that it's not that bad, and yet, here we are 2 years down the track and it was bad. Yeah,
it was pretty much spot on. Like, maybe not the details, but certainly the overall impact. It was pretty solid.
The seriousness of it was really, really solid. Yeah.
Well, and we got McGovern about 2 weeks before McClure did, and bloody media never gave us credit for that either, Pete, did they?
That's right. Certainly, those awards that they get, those media awards, we never got an invite.
Where's our bloody Walkley or whatever?
Yeah, I reckon you're about as good as Tom Brown too.
Yeah. Well, it's been really good having you on the CrowCast, Donkey, for the last.
You take a risk there.
Lead with a chin.
The interesting thing is, I don't think we don't have a clue, and I don't think the media has a clue who's going to be the Adelaide coach, and I don't think we have a clue whether Burton's going to survive or whether Campo's going to survive. But I think the feeling and the hope is that Burton and Campo go. But as for the coach, no idea what's going to happen.
I honestly think the media are going on logic at the moment. I think that they're basically trying to put two and two together, and they've basically come to the conclusion that there's no way that Camporelli or Burton can survive.
Sensibly, no.
And it just shows how much the media underestimate Adelaide's ability to...
Because, you know right now that they would be sitting Birdman down and they'd be saying, look, mate, understand that, there's a lot of heat at the moment and we're probably going to have to, make a few tweaks to your role. But look at Phil. Look at what Phil has achieved.
Yeah.
Now, Phil was the general manager of football operations during the Kurt Tippett scandal and had his fingerprints over emails and all sorts of stuff. But what we did is we got him making coffee for 5 years, and now he's on the rise again in the AFLW.
That's right.
And he's risen again, and everyone's forgotten. So you just, you look at Phil as a great example, Bird, and you will rise again.
Well, you're quite right. Phil was laying so low that, I thought he was on the missing person list. Because maybe it's
he was on milk cartons, for God's sake.
He was on milk. He was just pushing the tea trolley, mate. That was all he was doing.
But you're dead set right, Pete. I find it difficult to see a scenario where Brett Burton and Scott Camporelli are left out in the cold. I just can't see it. I actually think that Scott Camporelli will end up being our GM football, and I think I honestly think that's what's going to happen. That. No, I do.
I reckon Bird will end up as the CEO of the baseball team.
Yeah, something like that. There'll be some.
Of the baseball team.
Or he might take over from Smarty or something like that. There'll be a role for Brett Burton. He's in the club, and there'll be a role for him. And I would almost again make one of your letterbox bets, Macca, that Campo will end up our GM football. I've just got this weird feeling that that's what's going to happen.
No. I cannot see it. Just can't see it. But,
poor old PJ Crows in the chat has just had a cardiac arrest. He's only been back on the chat for 1 week.
Birdman will have some kind of wellness role.
Wellness role.
Some kind of wellness.
Can he be the wellness and orange cutter for the esports team? The legacy guys.
He's gonna. Oh, far out. He's gonna organise the camps every year.
Yeah.
Far out.
Oh, dear. With Burton, I've always said he's packed parcels beautifully down in Cromania. That's where I reckon he belongs. But again, I would have thought that simultaneously while they're looking for a coach, if they're getting rid of Burton in that particular role, surely they must be looking around at the same time trying to get somebody as the head of football.
Well, wasn't there talk about Vozzo again, as always?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a whisper about that at some point.
We've had a couple of nibbles at Craig Vozzo, but yeah. Sorry, Don.
I don't understand how you stay on as the head of football if you're not on the coaching selection panel. Well, that's a pretty big head of football.
Oh, look, when the coach reports to the head of football, and Burton's not on the coaching panel, I heard Fagan on 5AA being grilled by Rowie about that, and Rowie did a great job grilling about it. Fagan darting here, there, and everywhere, suggesting that, he's got other jobs to do, and but ignoring the fact that he would be his main job, and then stuff like also we don't want to mess with the review at all. So
look, if you're the head of football and you're not on the football, if you're not in the picking the coach, then you have some serious gaps in your job description.
I reckon Matt's nailed it. Matt in the chat has nailed Bird's new role. It's the diversity and wellness awareness manager. That's what I reckon. That
awareness,
yes, wellness awareness.
Well, that's probably more likely than Jason McKay's idea. He says Burton to reception. Well, Burton greeted me with "fuck off."
Yeah. Well, what are you doing here?
What you guys don't know is there was several really large boxes of rubber bands that have come in, and it's really important that Burton sits in the corner and counts them all just to make sure we know.
Matty Hoare says Claude Crow, and I reckon that's pretty right because it'd be like those masked singers on TV. You'd never know who he was, and that's probably the best thing for Bird.
Oh, can you imagine Claude, some of the hangers that Claude the Crow would be taking?
Yeah, but then he'd keep bumping into the opposition.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well, look, I think we could probably wind it up. There's tons of speculation. We don't know jack shit, which is disappointing because we were up to our necks in it last year and we've got nothing so far. Yeah. So, but we'll be keep an eye on CrowCast's Twitter account because if we do find out anything, we'll probably pass it on. But at this stage, it's drier than a desert.
Yep. I could have come up with a better one.
Yeah, I know you could have, Macca. That's why I had my finger over the mute button.
Good idea.
Right. Thanks once again to Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate for all their assistance that they've given us throughout the year. It's been fantastic, and we really do appreciate it. Also, the boys down there at Down to Earth Electrical for all your electrical data and air conditioning needs. Don't forget to follow Tim on Hardware Unboxed for all your geeky news, and a massive thank you to all our patrons on Patreon. Join us on Patreon at patreon.com/AFL CrowCast or the orange button on AFLCrowcast.com. Don't forget you can go to you can go to AFLCrowcast.com for an aggregation of all the Crows and AFL news in one spot. So if you're clicking it all over the place. And last but not least, thanks to everyone who's joined us on Spreaker Chat, and also the people that have tuned in and joined in on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you guys listening. Gentlemen, I think we're done.
Yay.
Okay, but I reckon next Tuesday we might have a lot to talk about.
Well,
Just
we'll
a couple of really, really late ones. The Greenwood committing to Gold Coast, that's come from Tom Brown Talking Footy.
So that's wrong.
And also Wayne Carey on Talking Footy has mentioned that we've spoken to Ross Lyon. So there you go.
Well, we'd probably be remiss not to speak to Ross Lyon, wouldn't we? I mean, we'd have to speak to him. If
Maybe.
We'd have to speak to him, if only just to say we've done it and ruled him out.
Yeah.
A GM of football.
Yeah.
Or senior coach assistant. Like,
Something.
I reckon they're not bad things.
Anyway, sorry. That was a couple of awesome tidbits.
Very good. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. Enjoy the grand final
guys.
this week, and we will see you next Tuesday for Tuesday Night Live, 8:30 as usual. Good night.
Cheers.
Up the
mate.
Giants.
Night all.
I don't know what's happened to my outro music, but I'm very disappointed, and we're still live, so don't swear. Oh, there it is.
Oh.
All right. Catch you later, guys.